to Mr. Brecheen from Oklahoma. Sorry, I didn't see you down there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm really excited about the prospect of delivering on a reconciliation package that is truly focused on doing something about changing this trajectory where this nation is headed. I compliment a post reminding us that Musk put out several days ago about Milton Friedman, lost wisdom, who said, keep your eye on one thing and one thing only, how much the government is spending, because that's the true tax. Every budget is balanced. There is no such thing as an unbalanced federal budget. You're paying for it. If you're not paying for it in the form of explicit taxes, you're paying for it indirectly in the form of inflation or in the form of borrowing. So let's talk about the inflation taxes. I'll lend credit to Chip Roy's. He's deeming it. I love that, the inflation tax. We don't want to talk about it. The 20% increase since January 2020 that every person, all families have seen, the devaluation of their currency, the loss of their purchasing power, their lack of ability in the purchase of a basket of goods, 20%, because every day you are either being taxed directly or indirectly through inflation by the way that we've set this thing up and the ability for us as a nation to just print money. You know, on the state level, governing is pretty easy. However much money you want to spend is relative to how much money you have in revenue. But whammo, when it comes to the federal ideology, we create it out of thin air and we begin to play monopoly. Look, I want to really address this concept that you hear colleagues on the other side of the aisle talking about, this is to benefit the rich at the expense of the middle class. And that couldn't be further from the truth, because what we're trying to do here is go after that inflationary tax. We are trying to not only allow the average American family with TCJA, which impacts, but we're allowing them not only to keep more of their hard-earned money, but to make sure the money that we've allowed them to keep is not devalued daily, as is the case and has been on steroids the last 4 years. And so as our colleagues talk about the rich, let's talk about the billionaire connected those to that ideology that say, let's subsidize wind and solar, that the Inflation Reduction Act, that we hopefully will garnish the ability to claw back. When they did reconciliation a few years ago, that is $750 billion to $825 billion cost to the American taxpayer. You look off the island of Spain and the Canary Islands, who said 10 years ago, that little island said, who are in the trade winds, will be totally independent, green compliant. And yet you look at numbers recently, last several years, 50% they're having to be backed up by fossil fuels. And they're in the trade wind zone. It is unreliable, it's unaffordable, and you look at the countries in Europe who decide they want to go down that pathway, and when they fix a true value of what they have to ask their citizens to pay to be compliant, they say, no, we're not interested in doing that. There is a real cost to every decision. There used to be a statement that this country used to believe in. It came from the gentleman by the name of John Henry William Bocher, and it said, you cannot help the poor man by destroying the rich man. You can't strengthen the weak by weakening the strong. You can't lift the wage earner up by pulling the wage payer down. You can't build character and courage by taking people's initiative and independence away, and you cannot help people permanently by doing for them what they could and should be doing for themselves. That was a maxim commonly cited in the 1920s. And yet, as we have conversations about Medicaid, what did the Democrats institute when we got into the World War II, sacrifice for the next generation? Everything was work dependent. And now we have to struggle in this culture to say, we're the safety net, we want to apply work requirements, and that is seen as obscure. The greatest generation, when they had a debt level to GDP like we have now, not only did they have the debt load, but by 1973, because they sacrificed to pay off that debt, they had a 25% debt to GDP ratio. Not only did they fight the war, but then they sacrificed to pay off the war debt. And we're in peacetime, and we're not willing to make the hard choices to pay off our debts. So for everyone who supported the IRA that led to a 20% increase on the average American family that is displacing jobs in the energy sector for oil and gas that is affordable, we're talking about right-sizing that and right-sizing government. And let me just end with this when we talk about Medicaid. Our population since 2012 in this country has grown 6%. You know what the Medicaid population has grown? 60% in the same time frame. You know who's the largest subgroup on the according to FGA of Medicaid? Able-bodied, not the blind, not the disabled, not pregnant, nursing mothers, elderly, able-bodied individuals that are above the federal poverty level at a rate of 138% or above. This is about bringing justice back in the tax code. With that, I yield.